Hi, I'm Shane with ScaleTrains.com here in our spectacular warehouse studio, and I'm here with Mark from our product support team, and Mark's going to take a little bit of time and share with us some information about the Essential Sound Unit. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Mark, you know, we worked with ESU starting way back in 2014 to really create a basic sound decoder for our operator line. And as you know, the operator line is designed to be that value price point line. And we wanted to bring a good, solid working decoder for folks that isn't as expensive as a full function decoder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's take a few minutes and share with our guests all about the Essential Sound Unit.
All right, let's go.
So Mark, let's just say I bought my first operator locomotive with DCC and sound, and I don't really know much about it. I'm just getting started in model trains, or maybe this is my first operator locomotive. What kind of sound functions can I expect in a traditional DC power pack?
With a traditional DC power pack, what you're going to get is motor sounds. They will operate very similar to the way they do on DCC, but you won't have all the functionality and control that you have on DCC.
Okay, so I won't get a horn or a bell or anything like that in a traditional
Not
DC.
with a traditional DC power pack.
Okay, now is there something out there? Let's say I wanted to upgrade my train set power pack. Is there something I can buy where I can at least blow the horn and ring the bell?
Yeah, there is. MRC makes a Tech 6 controller that is kind of a hybrid system. It'll operate DC, but it'll also send DCC signals to operate many of the functions that are found on the ESU equipped operator locomotives.
Okay, so that's a great way for me if I don't want to spend a lot of money on a DCC system to at least unlock some of the features of my locomotive, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So, you know, I hear these terms and we've been throwing around this video, DCC. What is that? And I mean, why is that an advantage for me?
DCC is digital command control, and it is a way that we can operate multiple trains in opposing directions on the same track using the command station and a throttle, handheld throttle.
Okay, so man, that really sounds like it unlocks a ton of potential for me. Because like right now, if I try to run more than one train, I can't control it, and DCC is going to do that for me.
Absolutely. It allows you to be as real as possible in operating your trains, and with the sound that we've put in the locomotives, it makes them sound real too.
Okay, that's awesome. So with an operator locomotive equipped with the Essential Sound Unit, let's say I've got my first DCC system, what kind of functions am I going to get out of the locomotive?
Well, you'll have control of the bell, and there's 2 different bells in it, and you have control of the horn. I believe there's 4 different horns that you can program into the locomotive, change those around. There's a coupler clank that you can make it sound whenever you're coupling the locomotives or cars. There is dynamic brake control, and then a fairly new feature called drive hold. Is something that ESU has come up with. It's in this operator locomotive.
Okay, so let's say we take this locomotive and we put it on the track. Does the locomotive start up right away? What can I expect?
Not right away. We've got it set up and programmed so that you, like the engineer would have to start the locomotive. So when you set the locomotive on the track and apply power to the track, either with DC or DCC, it's not going to make any noises right away. On DCC, or using the Tech 6, if you press F8 or number 8 on the MRC Tech 6, then that starts a startup sequence that you can hear the locomotive prime mover start up, and the lights come on, and then it comes up to an idle. It takes just a few seconds.
That's really cool. Same thing when I want to shut the locomotive down, press the same F8 button?
Yes, and it goes through a shutdown sequence and goes to quiet.
Okay. Now you mentioned some buttons there. How do I turn am I able to turn my headlight on and off?
Yes, you can. The decoder in this locomotive controls both your front and rear headlight, and they're directional depending on which way you've got it set to go. And you press F0 or the 0 key in order to toggle the lights on or off.
Oh, talk about function buttons. So that's what's on my controller.
Right.
There's other buttons there. There's other numbers. What numbers correspond to what functions I get out of my locomotive?
Well, the number 1 button on the Tech 6 or function 1 on a DCC controller will activate your bell. It's like a light switch. It's on, toggle it again, and it goes off. F2 is a momentary contact for the horn. So as long as you're pressing it down, the horn will blow. When you let off of it, then it will cease blowing.
Okay.
And F3, or number 3, will make a coupler clank sound that you can hear. And you can do that whenever you're coupling the cars or other locomotives.
Okay. Now, are there other function buttons too for other sounds, or is that pretty much it?
Yes. F4, when the locomotive is moving, will start a dynamic brake sequence. And in the dynamic brake sequence, where if the locomotive is moving, the prime mover sounds will go down to idle, and they'll stay there for a second or two and then ramp back up to what would be notch 4 on the locomotive, and then you'll hear the cooling fans come on, just like the real thing.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Now, I heard too there's something, another function that comes standard in the Essential Sound Unit, and that's something called drive hold. What is that?
Yes, drive hold is on or programmed or mapped to function 9, and that essentially separates the drive control from the sound control. When the locomotive is moving, if you toggle F9 in the on position, then the locomotive will lock in whatever speed that you've got it set at that time. And then your throttle control will run the prime mover sounds up or down. So if you are going down a grade with a long train, the engineer is not going to be pulling down the hill, so you wouldn't want to hear the prime mover run way up because you're trying to keep the train moving at an equal speed.
Yep.
So you lock the throttle setting in whatever speed that you want it going down the grade, and then you can turn the throttle control down, and the prime mover sounds will go down to idle, much like it might be if he was going down a grade. Same thing if you're going upgrade. You could go up the grade slow, and yet you could lock it with drive hold and run the prime mover up like he's working very hard to get up that grade.
Oh, that's really cool. So I can almost make it sound like a real locomotive then, whether it's working hard or hardly working.
That's exactly the way it's designed.
Awesome. Well, another term, as I'm learning about DCC, I hear this CV term, and I think it might be called configuration value, and it sounds like a mystery to me. It sounds like a scientific term. What does a CV do in the locomotive?
Well, a decoder is essentially a computer chip that has lines of instruction in it that tell the different sounds and functions what to do. And a configuration variable, or a CV, is simply a number that tells the decoder what you want it to do.
Okay, now I know from the decoder, the Essential Sound Unit decoder is designed to be a basic decoder, so it doesn't have all the functions of a more advanced ESU decoder. What are some of the CVs that I can adjust in my Essential Sound Unit?
Well, you can adjust the cab number. It has standard NMRA DC addressing, either 2 or 4 digits. You can control the start voltage. You control the acceleration rate and the deceleration rate. And on momentum, that used to be called, or on DC, that used to be called momentum. But we use acceleration and deceleration today on DCC. And there are other functions that you can control as well. Like I said before, you can choose from 4 different horns or 2 different bells. All of those are changeable with the CV values.
Mark, you mentioned the word addressing, and I assume that's how the DCC controller talks to the locomotive decoder. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, that's right. Each operator has a throttle unit in their hand that is connected either wirelessly or wired to a command station on the railroad. The throttle commands that you issue from the throttle go to the command station and then are distributed out to each locomotive. Each locomotive comes from the manufacturer, typically with the address 03. Now, you wouldn't want everything on your railroad in the same address because when you address them, they would all move at the same time. You can use either a 2-digit or a 4-digit address of your choosing, and it's quite common for someone to either use, if they like 2-digit addressing, to use the last 2 digits of the cab number, or 4-digit addressing, they can use the entire cab number on the locomotive.
So the locomotive we're demonstrating in this video is a CN number 3111. So a 2-digit address, you put in an 11. or a 4-digit address would be a 3111, correct?
That's right, and you can program the cab number from any of these into the locomotive, so each locomotive has a unique number.
So another CV you talked about, maybe if I want to change the horn or change the bells, can you walk us through how we would do that?
Those are fairly simple CVs that you can program on the fly, and with what's called programming on the main, which means that you can address that single locomotive on the main line and make a change as actually you can make that change while it's moving down the track if you want to.
Okay. And then there's some other CVs, like consisting is a word I've heard. What is consisting? And I know we probably don't want to go into a lot of depth because it's a little complicated, and we should probably refer folks to a different video we're working on. But tell us.
Yeah, it can be, but in a nutshell, consisting is when you take a group of locomotives, 2 or more, and you group them together. So when you change a command, or when you issue a command from your throttle, then all of the locomotives respond together. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that, but that's in a nutshell what consisting is.
All right, so you say work together. Now, if they're going to work together, each locomotive has to have a DCC decoder inside, correct?
Yes, that's correct, they do.
Okay, and now I've got my operator locomotive, and let's say I want to buy a rivet counter locomotive with DCC and sound in it. Can I make those work together using consisting?
Absolutely you can. Our operator line and our rivet counter line start out with the same great drivetrain, so it's very easy to get them to run together with very minimal amount of adjustments.
And then if I wanted to work with another company's locomotives that has DCC inside, I could do that as well, right?
Yes, you can. That's called speed matching, and yes, you can do that where you can get any other manufacturer's locomotive to run with ours or vice versa.
Okay. And now when I'm ready to program CVs, am I going to do that from my controller? Do I need to do anything special or buy anything different?
Some of the things, as I said, you can do with programming on the main. Other things that you'd want to do, it may be easier to use the programming track. We recommend either paged or direct mode programming. And you'll need to kind of probably.
Tell me what that is, or
yeah, that's a way that the command station via your throttle accesses the decoder in your locomotive to make whatever changes it is that you want to make, whether you're changing the address, or whether you're changing the horn or the bell, or whether you're speed matching with another one. There are a lot of different things that you can do in as far as the configuration variables are concerned. So it's probably best to be familiar with your DCC system and how to program with it. If not, pick up the manual and take a look at it before you start.
Now Mark, let's say that I've got into the CVs and I've made a mistake, and I don't know how to fix my mistake. What's the best thing to do?
Well, you know, everybody does that. I've gotten a little bit turned around sometimes myself. So built into the decoder is a way to reset everything to factory specs, and that's simply changing CV number 8 to a value of 8, and that resets everything back to the factory specs, just like when you take it out of the box.
Well, Mark, I'm really excited to run my first DCC and sound-equipped operator locomotive. Really appreciate you taking the time to explain that to us. You know, if you'd like more information about the Essential Sound Unit and operations, we're working on some more how-to videos, so be sure to visit our YouTube page. Mark, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
And as always, these models are available at ScaleTrains.com and select retailers. Remember, with ScaleTrains.com, you will not only see, but hear the difference.